Aloha everyone, my name is Noe, also known as Noelani. I'm a team member here at the Daybreak Star Radio Network, and I am super grateful to be in conversation with Xiuhtezcatl today. And yeah, we're excited to talk story about new music, album release, all kinds of groovy stuff, and also just to, learn more about his journey and where we're going. Yes, okay, so feel free to introduce yourself.
Panalti nataka Xiuhtezcatl, natiu, no iwehkakakoltsiuan Santa Cruz Calpixca, Xochimilco al Tepetl, Mexico. My name is Xiuhtezcatl. My people are the Xochimilco people of Xochimilco, Mexico. My family's from Santa Cruz Calpixca. On my dad's side, we are traditionally Nahuablantes. We are speakers of the language Nahuatl. And our Chinamperos, people of the Chinampa, people that worked the land, people that worked in these agricultural people. Our community is traditionally matriarchal and also very artisanal. We're all artists, you know. So traditions of that are important to us, and the small ways we're able to maintain despite a lot of loss and erasure and things from our culture that we are continuing to maintain. And I'm a musician, I'm an artist, I'm an organizer, and I spent a lot of my life kind of in environmental justice, climate justice, indigenous sovereignty, organizing spaces. And that is a really important part of my identity as a musician as well. My mom is an environmental activist, an organizer, and she kind of raised us in that lineage as well. And she's mixed European white. So definitely the confluence of my mom's kind of environmental justice work and the significant emphasis on our cultural identity from my father, those two things really inform a lot of both my art and my organizing. And as a musician, it's a gift to be able to share the stories of my community and of my people and of kind of the confluence of identities that I embody through the music. Happy to be here.
Thank you. That was such a beautiful introduction. Thank you for sharing. Mahalo nui. For sharing about yourself and your journey and the people who have brought you into being and the way that they've shaped you and your journey so far. It's so wonderful. Yeah. And I'm grateful to be here with you. In what ways, segueing to our questions, so in what ways do you utilize art as a tool for Indigenous storytelling? And feel free to offer any examples of how you've utilized and related with your art to convey and express particular stories or messages.
Really sweet. My dad, I just turned 24 and my pops is just over here in Oregon where I live sometimes. We were in ceremony and spending time together. And he was reminding me a story of when I was very young. I was born in Colorado, born in the States, and then from a very early age went and lived in Mexico for a few years on and off. And we went to the ocean, we went to the beach, and he was asking me if I knew the word for sand. And I was telling him, I was like, I don't remember how to say it in Spanish. And he's like, okay, we'll say it in English. And I don't remember the word for it in English. And he was like, okay. And he was kind of coaxing me to find the word, right? And I was like, well, I know how to say it in Nahuatl. And I was like, Shali, and that's the word that my great grandma taught us for sand. Mm-hmm. And our relationship with our language, I think, is a bit fraught. My great grandmother, she was the last Nahuablante, last fluent Nahuatl speaker in our family. And when she passed, she spoke more and more Nahuatl leading up to her passing. She returned to kind of her maternal language as she got closer and closer to transitioning out of this world. It was something that we always grew up kind of with a proximity to. And I'm very fortunate to have the name that I do, to have comfortability with the language in my mouth. Like it feels not very natural to me because of, songs and ceremonies and prayer and different things that we were privileged to have recovered, or to have, my grandfather go out and kind of bring back to our family. But it's, I'm just now as like an adult, as a young adult, really diving deep into the work of returning to learning of fluency in the language, and working with my teacher, with my Temachtiani, my Nahuatl teacher, and feeding the language into the music has been something that's been such a unique process to do that, and it's felt so special. And the way that I use Nahuatl and the way that I'm familiar with it is very feeding in little words here and there. You know, it's using it humorously and casually, and like sprinkling in the things that I do know that my grandma did teach us. So that's how I've used it in my music up until now. But now that I have a teacher and I'm like really learning the language, the music has now become like a vessel for this process of returning to our language, and also for some of these stories that can only be communicated in this language that is really different than English or Spanish.
Yeah.
My music has been very bilingual in English and Spanish, and so the way that the message permeates in my native tongue is it feels very different. The energy that it brings to the music is very different, and it's really beautiful to see more artists doing that part of like storytelling and cultural recovery and a promotion of showing us in a modern light, right? The genre that I have fallen in love with and have been cultivating my art through of hip hop and rap music is very modern. It's a very new music culture, and it has ancient roots, but those it's different, to bring something traditional into a modern context. I think it's important for young people to see that, and to see that we are a part of the future, not just our culture or our languages aren't just a part of the past. So anyways, that to me is like one of the most significant ways that have felt really rewarding as of late. And again, I don't ever claim to be fluent or a language speaker yet, because it's like that's a lifelong journey that I'm on. But to get to discover, I mean, to me, the music has always been, and more over the years, has been so personal and such like a deep, like digging really deeply into a lot of struggle and pain, and moving through that to find, liberation, I think, internally, individually, and familially, and from a community perspective. And so for the language to be a part of that expression, it feels like, oh, this is my artistic identity starting to fully unveil itself, with my language being a big part of it.
Yeah. That resonates so much. Thank you for sharing that. I'm just reflecting on my own relationship with language revitalization, and the way that you speak about language as like this really core part, it feels like, of like the music and the creative expression, because like, as you said, there's only certain stories, or there's certain things that can only be conveyed like in Nahuatl, or like I'm in the process of really learning Olelo Hawaii, and yeah, just also the way you spoke about how it like lives in your body and in your like mouth and your throat, and all these places where you're feeling the resonance of the language. One of my friends, Xiuhtezcatl, we talk about Nahuatl, because both of us, we're both trying. We're just like very kamali'i, like little sprouts in our journey, but just like thinking about the way that the environment shapes like our languages, and the way that like the sounds of the languages and the way that they feel. That's something that I just explore, like, as I'm sort of just starting to gather these pieces and like integrate them and understand them, just like exploring somatically with the way that the sounds feel, and like, just the openness, like Olelo Hawaii is just, it's very full and it's very open about the voela, like, and I could just talk about it for a long time. So anyway, thank you for sharing.
I'm such a nerd about the language stuff. I was just in Vancouver too, with my homie who's Tsleil-Waututh, and she studied linguistics, and we were just nerding out the whole car. We were driving up through the Sea to Sky Highway, and just like beautiful ocean, and meeting like right by the forest, and the sky was perfectly blue, and just driving through our homelands, and nerding out about language. And I think if I ever wasn't on this path of being a musician and doing a lot of the community work that I did, I was like, languages would have been a cool thing to dive into. And another friend of mine in the same book club, actually, that I met, my homegirl, my Tsleil-Waututh homegirl, and they were saying to me that they, like, their goal is to be like multilingual in indigenous languages. And to me, I think I never really considered that, because I think learning my language and fully acquiring fluency, it's such it's a big goal, and it's really, I think, challenging, and learning language is tough, and it's an important thing, like spiritually and like emotionally. But the thought of being multilingual in various indigenous languages. I was like, oh, that's such a, like, why wouldn't I dream that big? Why wouldn't I like have the ambition to be in community and relationship with other indigenous folks from different nations and be invited to, to have the openness to like learn other languages in its entirety. And anyways, it's a cool thought one day for sure.
It is. And that's something I've like thought about and just kind of like sat with too, is like wanting to, just like dive into, cause I come from, I don't know, and maybe this is just like a really deep conversation too, that maybe if you're ever open to like
all day. Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, no, I was just thinking like, oh, there's just so much there too with like, also the complexity of like Mexican identity. I feel like in general, something I've been learning with and like trying to understand more deeply, because of like the complexity of like my dad and his lineages and like my dad's dad and my abuelita. Like my abuelita is from, and all of her family are from Michoacan. And she came over when she was like in her 40s to marry my grandfather, and him and his family were from Sonora, and they have Yaqui roots and lineage, but my grandfather's father had to like get out of there because of like they were just like, I think at the time the Mexican government was like really just like trying to break up resistance bands that had to like flee into the mountains, and then my family ended up having to like go into railroad work and like working on cotton plantations and things like that. And so just like understanding myself as I was born and raised in the Southwest diaspora in Las Vegas, Nevada. So like,
wow,
watching my dad kind of start that reconnection journey and like asking himself all of those questions, like what does it mean to be like who he was, and just feeling like in betweenness is something. I don't know, are you familiar with Gloria Anzaldúa at all?
No.
I really appreciate her work. She's kind of offered me a perspective, and like her earlier work I have some like constructive and like criticisms about, because like she's also young, but she's a Chicana poet, scholar, and she has this theory of like nepantla to describe this sort of like sense of in-betweenness, and it's a Nahuatl word that I think was started to be used in like the 16th or the 15th or the 16th century, to describe like indigenous peoples at the time, their feeling of like being between two worlds kind of, and like, but it can also mean to be in a place between two bodies of water. So she kind of expanded that concept to kind of incorporate experiences of liminality, or like in-betweenness between cultures, between languages, between any kind of social, political, even geographical locations. So like physical in between places, like borderlands areas, things like that. And so that kind of philosophy helped me to kind of find a sense of home in the nepantla space and the in-between cracks between these different cultures, and trying to find a way to reassemble them in a new way. So her work is like has helped me guide my personal creative practices, and like, because I write, I'm also a performance artist, and I like, I'm just kind of, really grounded in a lot of she lays this really cool, almost ecosystem of concepts that really resonate with me. So I just wanted to share that. So thanks for listening. I know this is like...
thanks for sharing.
Thank you. Yes. But yeah, love language. I love the way that language... Yeah, I could talk about linguistics and stuff all day. Like, I'm super excited about that too, because one of my friends, Kanua, they studied the Hawaiian language, and then also Hawaiian studies in their undergrad. And so they've learned a good deal of Olelo Hawaii, like a really strong foundation to understand, just like learning about just like how just wild the language is. It's just such a sensual language. I'm like, that just fits.
Amazing. It's such a beautiful language. Be amazing to learn.
Yeah. So thank you for listening. Thanks for just being in conversation. This is yes. Okay. So I know I also wrote these questions too, and I want to sometimes it's like my brain like just goes all these different directions at the same time.
No, I feel you. I feel like we're those Yeah, I feel like all these conversations, even just like on Mexican identity and indigeneity and the overlap and yeah, I've been having a lot of really inspiring conversations in that field with a lot of native friends, undocumented native homies who live up here who are ancestors from Mexico and families from Mexico. And so I feel you. It's like they're all tangents that we spend days just breaking down and just, yeah, and it's inspiring. So I feel you.
Yeah, it is. And I really feel like I really want to experience more conversations like that because I feel like there's just so much to learn, and I just, I love to learn and just like, yeah. Okay, so let's see. So second one is, as a music artist, how do you view your role in promoting liberation and cultural representation? And can you describe an instance where you felt your art made a significant impact on your audience?
I'm so inspired by how I have seen music be this is a really significant tool for transformation and for liberation and for challenging the status quo and understanding art as an extension of movements of liberation. I think it's an important like continuous discussion when I evolve and grow my own journey as a musician. And yeah, there's, to me, the art has to be so irresistible, you know. I think it really overlaps well with social movements, because I think at the end of the day, like, the liberation of the masses is like the most irresistible vision, you know, for the people, that I think it's really difficult because there's so many structures in place that obstruct us from achieving our own liberation. Yeah. But I think it's ultimately what we want and what we must kind of fight to achieve in all these different ways. And I think music is also like the most irresistible and like communicable way of spreading ideas, honestly, and of inviting people to imagine something different than the chaos of what we exist within, what we're living through. And yeah, it's been, you know, being a native artist and spending a lot of time as, like, first and foremost, I guess, kind of as an organizer and as a spokesperson for kind of social movements. You see the range of, especially in the environmental space, like the kind of limited ways in which we organize or in which we have protests or how we gather. And it oftentimes has appeared in a very specific way. And when I started to see and tour a lot and play a bunch of shows, and especially when I started to throw my own shows, when I opened for a lot of people and played festivals and did that for a while. And then we started to finally play our own shows. And right before the pandemic hit, we had this album release show in the Bay Area. And the people that showed up and the energy that was there was just so infectious and so powerful. And it felt parallel to like organizing and being in the streets and like, you know, for a specific cause or a specific moment. Because you gather people's energies, you gather people's, I'm very fortunate that the audience of people that gravitate towards the music, while it's still like burgeoning and small, it's people who are invested in like great music that makes us move and scratches the itch of what we want from art and from great rap music and from great hip hop. But it extends into, you know, we see ourselves in the honesty of it. You know, we see ourselves in the in the ways that I think the music has helped me facilitate my own healing and help me understand myself in context of the world. I just did a performance at TED in Vancouver, which, you know, big like event where they have thousands of people. It's very expensive to attend, to be an attendant. The audience is overwhelmingly white and old. And it was a really interesting experience because I was invited as a musician, as a performer, which was really cool. And we got to perform the music and just tying, you know, in this moment that when it's really hard to think about ourselves, think about our art, and not feel for what is happening in the world, right? For me in particular, I don't really have a way to be able to remove myself from like the global context of what's taking place and you know, the genocide happening in Palestine. And so to bring visibility to that as a non-Palestinian artist, as somebody who's, you know, I feel a lot of parallels between what's happening right now and my own history, my own family's history. So even seeing in that moment, like what I brought to that stage was really disruptive to that space, you know, to a lot of some of the other speakers that they platform. There are like horrendous billionaire exploitative people that are being put on the stage right before me, and it was crazy. And you know, an overwhelming amount of people came up to me afterwards, mostly like basically a lot of people of color came up to me afterwards, Black, brown, and Indigenous folks, and were like, that was really hard. It's really hard being in this space, and you shook up the things in the right way, and sang Free Palestine on stage too, and having I'm as a spokesperson, it's very organic to me to like weave the message into the music through the music itself, and then to have these like little monologues that I get the opportunity to go a little bit deeper. And it was really impactful to see how uncomfortable we made people. And I think really tying the liberation of Indigenous peoples as an extension of what's happening globally and what people are fighting for globally right now, and tying that into the art and really just getting to get up there and really, and you know, I'm sure, you know, if you get a chance to see it, like how much I love the music, and getting all of the political message or the storytelling is an extension of how much love I have for this art form, and how this art form is just like a vessel for these stories that my great grandmothers fought for, so that we could hold on to these little fragments of what it is that we're bringing into the world. And I'm only here because of all those that came before me. So anyways, that's a really important, it was a really important moment for me to actually like vocalize that, and to honor also the legacy of Black art that has allowed hip hop to kind of extend and touch every corner of the world, not just as a form of entertainment, but as an extension of, you know, a liberatory struggle, a struggle for liberation, for Black liberation, that has given a voice to many people all over the world. You know, I've seen, you know, videos recently of, you know, like Afro-Greek artists who are using rap music to like elevate their identity as people who are, you know, treated very differently in a country that doesn't have that awareness of. Anyway, so I'm very moved by music, and I'm very moved by the audience in the ways that to understand how much this music means to people is a lot. Like it's a lot to feel that, and to hold that responsibility too. You know, you have a responsibility to yourself, and to be honest, and to be truthful through your art, and also audience. People take away a lot from it, which is a gift, you know?
Yeah, yes. And just from personal experience, like your music means a lot to me. I have so much like respect for just the way that you craft your songs and all of the dimensions and all of the aspects. It's just, yeah. So thank you. And that is,
thank you.
I appreciate you sharing that. That was so full and gorgeous. Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Yeah. So, just with our last couple of questions, I was wondering if you could share about the backstory of your recently released song, 1992, and how that relates with your experiences organizing, and also just sharing about how you feel about your new album coming out this year. Yeah.
Absolutely. 1992, this is a really important song. And it accrued more meaning as we worked on it longer. And that second verse in particular, I think holds so much. I performed it for the first time since, I performed it recently in the Bay Area at a different show. It was acoustic. It was just me and my boy, my Pomo relative, Bassy Vibe, who plays keys for me. It was just me and him, just my voice and him playing the keys. It was so beautiful to just like, I love the poetry of it, and almost to deliver it in a way that is much more like spoken word. And you really feel it. You really feel the lyrics. And 1992 was the year that my mom started this school called the Earth Guardian School in Maui, Hawaii, actually, of all places. And she, she started the school. She has no formal education, anything beyond 7th grade. You know, that was the last year of school that she had. It was her 7th grade year. I think she, left school like halfway through that year. But she had this vision of creating an educational space that uplifted kind of young people as leaders of their communities, that centered kind of environmental justice and organizing. Through their curriculum, they had 70 students and 9 teachers the first year. And the whole legacy of everything my family has done kind of in the environmental and the climate space comes from this school that she started. Earth Guardians since kind of moved around and became this global movement. And that's how my parents met. My father's an ambassador from Mexico, being invited to ceremonially light and extinguish this torch that the Earth Guardians were gifted by the Dalai Lama. as they did, 30 events across the United States in 1995. And it was called the Children's Torch of Hope Tour. My grandpa drove the school bus. They started it in San Francisco at the Rose Garden, or at the Golden Gate Bridge Park. That's where my parents met for the first time. So it's like this, the story that year, I think to me, it just kind of marks like a turning point in which my mom trusted her vision and had her commitment to the work of creating a better world for the next generation. That is what helped pull her out of a lot of suffering and hardship from her youth of being homeless on the street and not having, her mother abandoned her when she was 2 years old. And she's writing a lot of this is fresh in my memory because she's writing an autobiography right now, actually. So I'm reading these stories of all these wild trials and tribulations that my mom lived through. And so the work that she emerges through so much darkness in her life, so much violence and abandonment and exploitation, she emerges from that through her children and through the work of building this organization. And Xiuhtezcatl crater is like the birthplace of this idea. And she, hiked into this crater and had this vision really of young people all over the world, like standing up and changing the world. And it's like deeply significant to my family. It's a lot of backstory that, the song doesn't talk about all these things very explicitly, but, that's the meaning of it, because in the verse I talk about, the song is about the passing of the torch and about how those that came before us suffered through and lived through so much so that we could be who we are today. And they experienced, despite all of that trauma and difficulty and upheaval and the things in the way, we are able to cultivate the seeds that they planted. And there's a lot, it says they planted their seeds despite the soil they came from. I'm gonna see my little ones grow up learning their language and circumvent the trauma our mom is so often raised with. And it's just, it really embodies that as our generation. And the song is very light and it's very upbeat and it's very like makes you want to move and dance. And, so it's like a joyful reclamation of and declaration of like a triumphant, we're moving through a lot to get to where we are. And it wasn't easy, and we're still moving through it, and we're still like navigating these cycles of trauma that we pray will end with us. We will do the work so that they do end with us. So that's kind of the vibe of the song and why it matters a lot to me personally. Yeah. And we got to shoot a bunch of visuals for it in SF, in the Bay Area, and the Mission, which I think was also really significant. And just to kind of bring it back to where my parents met. And anyways, it's an important song, and I think it almost goes back and like tells some of the backstory of the stories that are going to unfold on the record. And the whole album is really about like returning home, returning to myself, and like also this coming of age story. I think of, and I haven't really talked about it too many places. This is like the first interview I'm doing about the record, but the name of the album is Still Not You, which is my second name, and it's the sun. It's the Nahuatl word for the sun, and I was gifted that name, and when I was 6 weeks old in the Black Hills, Xiuhtezcatl, not you. And so this is that journey, the journey of the sun, of like emerging from the darkness and emerging from a lot of the hardship that came before us to be able to illuminate this path for those that are to follow. So that's anyways, the record, we've been dropping songs, and we have another single coming out in June, little bits and pieces as we go. But 1992 I think feels like it lays the foundation, I think, in the backstory of a lot of things. So they're going into the record, a lot is on the table, and it's very emotional. It's the most personal music I've ever written. It's the most personal songs that are still yet to have been heard by anybody. So anyways.
Thank you so much, Mahalo Nui Loa. That was just wow.
There's a lot to say about this album, and about this song, and about and I've been trying to be careful about how much I like put out there, because I want a lot of it to speak for itself
Yeah.
and for people to interpret it in the way that they need it, you know? Cause that's been I turned in the album last week. Last week I turned 24 and I turned in the record, and I was like, we were working on it for 4 years. You know, we started working on these songs in 2020, and some of them even actually kind of before then. So a lot of full circle completion happening and release, and like these songs aren't going to belong to me anymore, and it's for my people and for my community and for those who need it in whatever way that it can be of service. So anyways, thanks for asking me, and thanks for listening, because I'm very, very passionate about this record in particular.
It's beautiful the way that you weave together the mo'olelo with the story of like all of the different elements and the different stories layered on top of each other that really laid these seeds that you're now just like cultivating and offering to our peoples in a moment where we really need this, and like just so generous. And yeah, I just feel like your relationship with creativity and the way that you express yourself and translate your existence, but also like, and also the whole like like experiences and layers of ancestors and stories and emotions and experiences into your creativity. I feel like, yeah, it's really amazing to see, and I feel grateful to live in a time where I get to, yeah, just be in conversation with you now, and also just get to experience the art that you offer into the world. It's so meaningful, and it really, really is. It's so healing.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to, like, there's just so much, and there's so much fullness and so much depth within this new album, and thank you for just sharing about it here today. It's really wonderful to get to learn about it, and I'm super excited for its release. And if there's anything else you want to share, I know you said you have to go up 3, so we've got about like 12-ish, maybe 10 minutes. But yeah, the last couple things is I have one more question, which is as we wrap up, what are your hopes and aspirations for the future of Indigenous art and music? And yeah, how do you envision your work contributing to this? And yeah, any messages or anything you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, it's such an abundant. There's such abundance of potential for thriving art scenes and thriving art communities to be central to kind of Indigenous spaces. And I'm really excited for that. And I've been really encouraged by getting a tour this last year and playing a bunch of these kind of one-off shows this year, and just being around a lot of Native folks and other young Native people, Native artists, friends of mine, peers, and just being super just inspired. And I feel less weight on my shoulders the more that I talk to other young Natives, because it's like we're all holding a piece of this. We're all holding a piece of this like burgeoning like art renaissance of I don't know, just like shaping. A lot of it has to do, you know, with reclamation and relearning and but also just doing things that no one's done before, like doing things that Native artists haven't done before, the ways stepping into spaces and innovating in ways that, like, I think our life experiences as Indigenous people vary so much from one another's, vary so much to, like, I think a lot of what is out there, that everything from the films that we make to the albums that we record to, you know, the visual art that we install to the, like, I think there's just like a lot that can be really challenging to the status quo and really challenging to any of these kind of industries that are oftentimes not really about the art. So I think as art liberates itself too from a lot of these constructs, I think Indigenous people can be a part of that and help continue to weave art into movement spaces in beautiful ways. So I'm just stoked. Like, there's a lot of young, I will say one of the most like inspiring things for me too, from like a musical standpoint, is just the internationalism of like Indigenous relationality and like how we can be in community with Indigenous people from all over the world. I think that's what will help, because there's like such thriving like Indigenous music as like genres that have permeated and as like artists that have been lifted up from Latin America that have not, like, people up here aren't tapped in with it. And obviously there's like a language difference and certain things like that, but there's a lot of native folks who have roots from south of the border who live up here. And I think we only benefit from like talking to each other and being in community with each other. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I think native artists, native rappers, people, you know, it's easy. I see it being easy to kind of like fall into pitfalls of perpetuating and portraying like a very specific version of ourselves that sometimes I think kind of placates to like a white gaze or anyways, I just think, even just talking to my friend Helena Gualinga, who's from Xiuhtezcatl, from the Ecuadorian Amazon, she after all their protests in the streets, they go and they dance all night and they play music and they celebrate, and it's just like, it's a part of the culture in Latin America in a way that is so different. I think movement culture and like the history of political organizing is overlapped with just like art in such explicit ways. And I think up north here too, like I see a lot of potential for us to be able to like weave that with each other, and just be artful and like be unapologetically like creative and be and just to be weird and like make weird shit and like do things that aren't expected of us and portray ourselves in ways that aren't, you know, that are true to how expansive like our communities and our identities are, and having it not have to even lean so heavily on the fact that we're native, you know, or the fact, you know, like I think that identity can and for many of us will never be separated from our art. But I think also it's like giving ourselves permission to not have to be like native rappers or like native musicians or native visual artists or I'm native director. It's like, let's do what we've always, because again, also like even indigeneity or being native, like was imposed upon us. Like we were just the people of this lands, of these different lands, of this river, of this island, of this, you know, mountain range, like, and then we moved around too. We also migrated and like, so our politics, like I think the framing in which we understand ourselves too is still like so like filtered through like lots of colonial ideas that aren't helpful to us. So it's I'm really just excited about the expansive like possibility and like plurality of who we can be. I love that about genres and music in general, the blurring of lines and like the influences from different like musical eras and different things, and how rap music even too, like I'm such a nerd about rap music, and I just love how that is also expanding and changing and taking cues from, you know, so many different places and so many artists that are so multifaceted in ways that are really real to them. And anyways, I'm very excited about the space, and I'm excited and just inspired by my peers and stoked to contribute something that I hope can help lay the groundwork for people after me to be even more experimental and more expansive and more honest and more, you know, take everything that I create and run with it and go even further. Cause I think the genre bending of it, the cultural, like, it's a cool time. I'm excited to get back on the road. I'm excited to tour again. That's like my favorite thing in the world, is like playing these shows and getting to be around the people like in person and to give them and deliver them the art, like come to their communities, be received by folks. So it's going to be a good time. And I think this album is going to change a lot. And I think I think the world is ready for more visibility for, you know, what our communities have to offer in all of these spaces.
So beautifully, wonderfully, artfully assembled and phrased. Mahalo nui. That was fabulous. Wow. Yes.
Thank you.
Woo! Yeah, I feel enlivened and just like energized. I feel just in my body a sense of like hope and empowerment. So thank you for sharing that and weaving that together. Yes.